If there's a drink that has learned to speak the language of place, it's wine. 8 millennia of patience, in a glass the weather of a season, the character of a soil, the quiet work of hands and time. But how does the world turn hillsides of grapes into oceans of wine year after year? The journey begins long before a cork meets a bottle, out where the rows run to the horizon and clusters swell with sunlight. As summer leans into autumn, vineyards change gear, leaves bronze sugars climb, and every decision matters. Pick too soon and you'll taste green edges. Wait too long and you'll lose brightness to heat. Walk a row in the early light and you'll see why growers still carry refractometers and tasting knives, science and instinct moving in step. Where grapes are destined for table wines and large lots machines do what sheer human labor cannot. Tall harvesters stride the alleys with soft shaker heads tuned to the rhythm of ripeness. They send a controlled tremor down the canopy, just enough to loosen ripe berries without shredding leaves or splitting skins. Below, padded catchers cradle the falling fruit and steer it to conveyors. The best of these rigs can gather many tons in an hour, working cool pre-dawn windows to protect aromatics. In regions and blocks aimed at finer bottlings or when the fruit is fragile, hands still rule. Crews move vine by vine with small shears, clipping whole clusters into shallow, cushioned bins. It's slower, costlier, and exacting, but the reward is intact fruit with pristine skins and stems, the raw material for wines that will ask for patience later in barrel and bottle. Not every cluster meets a press. Some meet the sun. In hot, dry basins with dependable breezes, growers set aside fruit for raisins, the purest lesson in concentration nature offers. Grapes are spread on clean mats or raised racks for a couple of weeks. Water leaves, sugars and flavors stay. In other places, fruit is allowed to dry on the vine itself, deepening color and caramel notes. However, they're made finished raisins, head to facilities where vibrating screens and air knives lift away stems and leaves. High-pressure sprays polish the skin's optical sorters, separate by size and shade, and sealed cartons send that condensed sweetness out into the world. Back at the winery, trucks tip their loads into receiving hoppers. From here forward, the goal is firmness, chill, and gentleness. Grapes ride belts instead of augers. They pass the first gatekeepers, hands pulling leaves and outliers, then modernize cameras and near-infrared scanners that can spot unripe berries, raisins, pinked fruit, even bits of stem. Anything that can shadow flavor downstream exits now. Destemming comes next for most red wines. A cage and fingered rollers coax berries off the rachis without crushing seeds, those bitter little saboteurs that must not split. Some lots will include a percentage of whole clusters to bring lift spice and structure. Others will be all destemmed fruit for a rounder, silkier line. White wines especially, those chasing delicacy, often skip a cold soak entirely, heading straight to press before skins can lend tannin. Crushing isn't the violence the word suggests. It's more of a nudge, twin rollers adjusted to dimple the berries, not shatter them. The must-juice skins and seeds slides to a tank, and the quietest part of the alchemy begins. Yeasts, some native, some cultured, wake up to sugar. In 10 to 30 days, they'll turn it into alcohol and aromas, while releasing heat and carbon dioxide. Skins rise, forming a cap. Twice a day, sometimes more, that cap is pushed under or pumped over, so color, perfume, and tannin can dissolve into the liquid. It's a dance as old as wine itself, now guided by thermocouples, jacketed tanks, and oxygen meters. When the fermentation eases and the numbers say enough, the new wine is drawn off. The soggy mass left behind heads to the press. First free-run juice, then gentle fractions that bring different shades of flavor and grip. Whites and rosés take a clearer path. They're pressed before fermentation settled and fermented cool to protect flowers and citrus, then filtered bright. Reds move on with their deeper cargo. Now the winemaker chooses a barrel or a tank, a year or 2 or 3. Oak is not seasoning so much as a frame. New barrels give spice, vanilla, clove, a hint of toast and micro-oxygenation that softens tannin. Older barrels whisper instead of speak. Stainless steel offers a neutral stage for purity and snap. Time in wood lets textures knit and edges tuck in. Time in steel preserves a lightning line of fruit. Throughout racking clarifies topping, protects, and lab checks ensure the long, slow conversation with oxygen stays polite. Bottling is a choreography of cleanliness. Glass arrives washed and waiting. The line steams and sanitizes. Inert gas sweeps out oxygen as filling nozzles measure to the milliliter. Closures matter. Natural cork breathes gently and suits wines that want to evolve. Technical cork and microagglomerates promise consistency. Screw caps lock out oxygen for wines that live on freshness. Labels carry more than a name, they carry the place and the season that built what's inside. Not every grape's destiny is a bottle. Some become sparkling wines, a second fermentation in sealed tanks, or in the very bottle you'll open later, trapping carbon dioxide as pinpoint streams that lift aromas to the rim. Some become sweet wines by late harvest, by noble rot, by freezing on the vine, so ice stays behind and nectar flows. Each path is a different grammar for the same fruit. Behind all this are the quiet labors no celebration sees pruning in the freeze of winter to shape next year's crop. Tying shoots as spring winds tilt the rows. Thinning fruit in midsummer so what remains can ripen completely. Nets to keep birds respectful. Cover crops to feed the soil. Invite pollinators and keep erosion at bay. Sensors now measure vine water stress, leaf by leaf. Satellite maps show vigor differences row by row. Tractors learn to steer themselves down the same ruts to protect living soil. The newest harvesters shake only what's ready and leave what's not. The craft got smarter without losing its soul. Fraud can haunt the rarest labels. There's no denying the stakes when history fits in your hand. That's why provenance records, forensics, and modern track and trace systems have joined the cellar master's nose. On the other end of the spectrum, bulk wine moves in chilled tankers around the globe, blended for consistency, so a familiar glass tastes the same in January as in July. Between those poles lives most of the world's wine made with pride at human scale, priced so it can meet a weeknight. And then there are raisins again. Humble, perfect, patiently made, which remind us that grapes don't need to be fermented to be profound. They anchor breads in winter, brighten pilafs, sweeten tagines, and sneak concentrated sunshine into a child's lunchbox. Same fruit, different poetry. Stand in a cellar at dusk and you'll hear it, the soft tick of cooling tanks, the muffled creak of wood, the breathy hiss of a line purging air. Outside the vineyard is already writing next year's story, roots hunting deeper canes, hardening for the cold. Wine is not a single act. It's a cycle, a braid of choices, a collaboration between geology and weather, and people who care. So when a glass tips and catches light, you're not just tasting fermented juice. You're hearing the hills where it grew, the hands that picked it, the judgment that steered it, and the time it was allowed to become itself. That's why the first sip is never just flavor. It's place. It's patience. It's craft. Thank you for joining this journey from vine to bottle, from sweetness dried in the sun to wines that carry seasons inside them. If you're curious for companion segments sparkling production in bottle ice wine pressing at sub-zero dawns, or a deeper look at modern optical sorting, I can script those as add-ons in the same style.